Okay, so first of all, I apologize for randomly suddenly going live at 10:19 a.m. on a Monday rather than 1 p.m. But as I mentioned in my other note, I have to go pick up my daughter. I have this narrow window of opportunity between her classes, between 1 and 2 to pick her up 25 minutes away and have to get her at 1 so that she can be back here in time for her class at 2. Um, but I skipped Friday because I wanted to jump on and do that quick live with Mark Owsley and Lisa Logan about school choice. So I didn't want to skip another. So I at least wanted you guys to have something to come find. If you came over here at 1 o'clock, my apologies. All right. And if you happen to be around, jump on in. So today I want to talk about the big battle ahead for homeschoolers. Now, if you're in a state that is not really making a lot of headway towards school choice vouchers and ESAs, um, I hate to say it, that's a good thing. Uh, as they are currently constituted. Um, if your state or if you're being active in your state for school choice and you're trying to push for fewer taxes or tax credits or ASAs that are self-funded, like your FSA, more power to you, keep going. I'd say double down on your efforts because increasingly the push is going to be to uh, persuading you that the money should continue to run through the government and just come quote unquote back to you. This whole we're going to give you your money back. And the obvious pull of that way of putting it is it validates the legitimacy of government being in charge of education or validating what education is. So it legitimizes that. The second, which, obviously government doesn't like to give up power. The second thing it does is it taps into that feeling of like, ooh, I'm getting something back. Like it's mine and they're giving it back to me. And you have that impression that like you're winning. So it's a great argument, especially for Republicans who want to pretend to be small state people, pro liberty people when they're actually not at all. So, you know, that's a pull. And that narrative is going to stick. So if you're fighting for the kind of reform where you just get to not pay in the first place, you're going to have to fight extra hard. You're going to have to persuade your legislature that, and you won't gain any ground with Democrats. You might with Republicans, but you're going to have to persuade them that this is the way to go, that the only way to really stick it to the public system, and by that I mean the government system, is to not pay in the first place, to give people an opt out, and not just parents either, but anybody who's dissatisfied with what's going on, and to change the system of funding from the ground up. But let's start small. Start with the parents who are opting out of using it. Use the same argument the school choice people are making. I'm not using it. Why should I pay for it? And at least begin reducing the government's footprint. That's incrementalism. Real incrementalism is reducing the government's footprint, even if you're doing it like a little bit at a time. And that's the only legitimate way to do it. You're also invalidating their authority to take it from you just because you exist. Okay, now you might be wondering what's the funding currently. Well, in my state, I can only speak for my state, but the current funding for North Carolina K-12 as an example is 63% of it comes from state money, which basically means like state income tax. 26% of it comes from local, like real estate taxes, county type money, and 11% from the federal. Uh, that that's how it breaks down. So that's where people say, well, those who don't pay property tax are not paying for education. Yeah, they are. So they're paying for it through their income taxes. Um, that said, it obviously isn't just parents, and it obviously isn't just individuals. It's corporations too, because we all pay income tax to the state. And the breakdown of percentage is that 71% of those income taxes are paid for by the top 17% of earners. So again, the vast majority of, the people are not paying the lion's share of those income taxes. And that's where the lion's share of education funding comes from. And then when you get down to the property taxes, you probably have a similar breakdown of, yes, everyone's paying a little bit, but the majority of it's paid by the high earners, many of whom are probably already using some kind of private school if they have kids, and so on. So I stand by my claim that it's a subsidy, because whether or not you calculate it based on lifetime earnings, lifetime contributions, or whatever, right now at this moment, you are getting something you didn't pay in this year. How's that? Cash out of pocket is coming from other people. And when you factor in debt that every state has, not just the federal government, it's even more so. So yes, over your lifetime, you probably will have paid in taxes. And I love people getting tax money back instead of having to go to government. But given that you're not going to get it all back, you haven't lived that rest of your lifetime yet, you haven't paid it yet, you're probably not going to live in the same place the rest of your life. I mean, the whole equation falls apart, which is why I come back to the principle of the matter, which is, even if it were dollar for dollar exactly what you paid, and it was flowing through government and they were giving it back to you, the philosophical point stands that you have validated their authority to take it and give it. They're still in charge. And if you allow for that, you allow for everything that likely comes with that. Governments are not benevolent. They don't exist to help you. They don't exist because they care about you. The only legitimate role they play is to protect your rights. And we are so far past that. It's not even funny. We're probably past that like 5 minutes after the Constitution was ratified. But if it ever were true. So we have to be personally vigilant. And one of the ways to do that as homeschoolers is don't take the money. And a lot of people are going to say, but I want it, I need it, I'm sorry. Then you're participating in your own demise. Just like people who take welfare, just like people who take food stamps, just like people, you are in the system. You're attached to the system. You're building your life around a system that has exploited you into this position. You're in the position you're in of needing the money because they robbed you and they set you up with your choices to start with. Now, if you want to go participate in that and reward that and validate that, obviously I cannot stop you, but I just need to call it out for what it is. That's what you're doing. So if you don't want to do that and you want to protect your children from being part of that system, and you want to, not suddenly become just a different kind of cog in a different piece of the Truman Show machine, then you have to acknowledge that reality, that school choice with these government-funded ESAs and so forth, they're coming for homeschooling. And the way that they're coming for it is as follows. There's momentum right now. People are angry, frustrated with the government system, frustrated with the government control. They want more parental rights. They want more power over their own money. They want all this thing. Big momentum going in that direction. Well, does government want to let that momentum keep going? Do even the Republicans want to let that momentum keep going, where they're going to have parents and other people going, you're not doing your job? Probably not. No, they really don't. They want to slow that momentum, but they don't want you to realize they're slowing the momentum. They want you to vote for them and think that they're your big helpers and saviors. So they come along and they offer you this thing, school choice, and it will, in Arizona and places like that, it will take the wind out of the sails of the parental rights movement temporarily. I hope temporarily, if not permanently, but they hope that's what it will do. They've already had a rush to the website to apply for the ASA funds. It's been overloaded. They're already finding parents, especially with special needs kids, who are like, okay, I got the money, but there's no place for my special needs child. We don't have like open enrollment. They're not going to just let me in. There aren't schools for me. So what's going to be the next thing? Oh, we have to do this. We have to make spaces. So there's going to be yet another demand because money isn't access. Let's repeat that. Money isn't access. Money isn't access. Okay? It's just not. It's like money doesn't equate to services. Money isn't things. Money is just money. Yes, there's some power wrapped up in it in theory. But if the market isn't there, it's just nothing. It's nothingness. Right now, it's political power. That's all it is. They're trading. They're buying your votes. They're buying your attention span. They're buying your loyalty. They're buying your dependency. Whatever they're buying with the money, they're not buying you or your child's education. They're not even buying you access to a school. And it's your money and your children's money and your grandchildren's money, because most of it's borrowed. So just be wise to what it actually is. But they want to take the momentum out of it. They want to take the wind out of our sails. So we'll maybe calm down a little bit for a few years, be like, oh, you can find private school. And some people get in and actually, let's say a majority of them find a solution because of the money. So that takes the wind out, or at least if nothing else, it takes the impetus to give to the causes that are pushing for parental rights, like dampens them a little bit. We got school choice. We win. And they're not really looking at what the substance is. So that's the first point of it. The second way they're going to come for homeschooling, because then what happens is a lot of people rush in and you have a certain amount of attrition from homeschooling, because a lot of the rise in homeschooling were actually people who just left the public schools, and one could even argue they're not really homeschooling. I mean, they call themselves homeschoolers, they filed a homeschool affidavit, but the second they got home, they stuck their kid on time for learning, and they put and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's not fundamentally philosophically home education. It's not, self-directed or whatever. It's still just like coming home and buying a different product, and that's fine. You're protected from some of the woes of the public school, but you're not like all the way to autonomy yet. So let's say they get some people back in through that, and then we have a little winnowing out of the potential homeschoolers. Then let's say we get another percentage of the homeschoolers who say, great, I can now use this to pay for my fill in the blank curriculum, access to classes, the why, whatever it is that you were using. Well, now these providers have to decide if they're going to take the money. It's a matter of time, minutes, hours, days, before the government comes along and says, well, no. Now, the Y might already be getting some government money, so they might already be kowtowing to what standards are. I don't know. But let's just say it's another curriculum provider, or like some of the providers that I've used for my kids that are independently run little, like educators with their own website and their own curriculum and their own stuff. And somebody comes along and says, I want to use my ESA Visa card. That's a Visa card. It works like a Visa card. But the money on the other side of it, just like your FSA card, like if I use my FSA card at the CVS sees it as like a MasterCard or whatever, right? It, in theory, isn't tasked with validating whether it's applicable, except that they are. In other words, as soon as they decided they would take FSA money, CVS Corporation, the government came in and said, now you need a software program, or you need a thing that validates that the expenditures on this card are legit to go with this money. Like I have to literally separate and go to the CVS, and I have to, and that's my money to begin with. I put it into the FSA. No one gave it to me. So I got to take my shampoo and my, mascara, and I got to stick it off to the side and pay with a separate form of payment to my, medicine, my, whatever else is included, in the prescription shit that I have that is okay from, on the list of approved things. They run that through and that clears. No worries from the auditors there, but then I pay for my shampoo. If they ran the card through and had the shampoo and the other stuff, they'd get in trouble. It's kind of, they'll get audited. Not just me. I'll get a rejection, and then they'll get a slap on the wrist, like, no, you weren't supposed to do this. So they don't even allow for that. They're a big enough corporation, they can pay somebody to write them a program that just says, not approved, not allowed. It won't even go through. You have to separate those things out. Okay. And I've had it happen actually where I tried to buy my vitamins because I need to take B12 vitamins, or I would die eventually. So I tried to pay for it with that because I have a literal medical condition where I have to take it. And they told me I had to come back with a written prescription for it to be covered. And then even when I did, then the pharmacist said, oh, our tech was mistaken. FSAs don't cover vitamins even when they're prescribed. It's not on the list. Can't pay for it. You got to use another form of payment. So they knew. I mean, they were trying to run it through and it wouldn't go through. And they were like checking. And the big pharmacist comes talking to the little pharmacist, says, oh no, they were mistaken. And I got into the trouble of getting a prescription. So that's how the FSA works when it's your money. Now people say, oh, it doesn't work that now. With the Arizona law doesn't say anything about that today. But already the thing is like, it's the ink is just dry. And there are already calls on both sides, not just left, but also right, for more oversight, for what are we going to do? How are we going to, and they are saying, look, this is why homeschoolers will not fill out a homeschool affidavit. It's on the list of FAQs. Homeschooling families who apply for ESA money will not fill out a homeschooling affidavit and will not be considered homeschoolers for the purposes of the Board of Education, whatever. And when asked why, when I asked the Corey DeAngelises of the world, when I got literally Corey and then his stooge person who came to, smack me on Twitter, why that was, the answer was, well, it's to protect the homeschoolers who don't take the money from those regulations. I'm like, the regulations you said that weren't going to happen? Those? The ones you said, we'll think about how we're going to protect people from those later? The ones I've been screaming about for a better part of a year? Those? That you don't know yet. You don't know what they are. So how many parents are going to realize that? How many homeschooling parents? I mean, hopefully the really seasoned homeschoolers, no. But the new ones or the would-be ones who want to do what you're doing. They want to do homeschooling that you're doing, that I'm doing, whatever. They want to do it. But they're like, oh, Minnie, this can be so helpful. It's going to be so helpful. I get to, because I had to take a part-time job or I'm not working now. And it's, that's going to really help our budget if I can pay for what? If you can pay for what? Curriculum. What's that? A couple $100 a year? They want to give you $4,000 to $7,000. You really going to spend $4,000 to $7,000? You can't use it to go buy your groceries. You can't use it to pay for that educational field trip to the Grand Canyon. You can't. I guarantee you can't. So you can't pay it. You can pay maybe a tutor. Maybe they'll allow for that. Like you hire a tutor or a teacher or something that might help you work some more hours, but not a babysitter. And that tutor is going to have to probably be registered as a legit actual tutor because otherwise they'll get audited and they'll be like, are you really a tutor or are you the babysitter? Are you the babysitter? So that mom doesn't have to, mom can go to the job and they can just sit with the kid and then come home and the mom's doing the teaching. Are you really that person? And they talk about, well, they'll cover special needs, things like, yes, that's good. And that's fantastic. But do you know the cost of having private special needs help? That won't even come close to paying for the cost. It won't. It might pay a portion of tuition to a private school, but you still have to get the rest of the money from somewhere else. And your child, if they're really super special needs, have an IEP, whatever, they're still going to have to go to some government facility or provider to get their services they're entitled to by federal law. Even homeschool kids who have special needs do that. So you're still attached to the government. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like a little carrot, but then there's all these sticks. So they'll get the homeschoolers by pretending they're promising you something that is really going to make it possible or make it doable, but it really isn't. Because unless they're making up for the fact that you have to go to work and you don't have childcare and you could use the money on childcare, it's not really taking the biggest expense away. And as far as curriculum, I surely hope it doesn't cost you that much, but let's say it does. Let's say you decide that you equate homeschooling curriculum with, for example, like the full range of stuff available through the program that I use for my kids, like soup to nuts, get the diploma, what my ex is making me do. So then it's really private school. I mean, you're private schooling at home, but it's still like that. Now, that's what I had to do because I didn't have a choice. Now, I didn't do it with my eldest, and we sort of hodgepodged it together. But with the younger two kids, I'm being kind of forced to do it until I can persuade them to ask not to do it because they have the power. I don't. But as long as they continue to want to go to this little school thingy, even though I pick the classes, they're still roped into that. And that's why I get so upset when I thought it was going woke, because I'd have no choice. But if someone came along and said, here's the money to pay for that, then I guarantee you this program would full-blown go woke. They're teetering on the edge as it is because of their accreditation. They say they're holding the line. I had a private conversation with the guy. He says, we're not doing Castle SEL. We're not doing it. Our accreditors want us to do it, but we're not. We're coming up with our own plans. They have their own program. They showed it to me. It's not that bad. It doesn't do any of the shit that Castle does. So they're holding the line for now. But if they start taking government money, and if they get pressured by the people who run their company to take that government money, it's going to be over. It's going to be like any other private school. It's going to be like any other woke private school, and they're going to be doing all the things that the government tells them to do. But there'll be homeschoolers who are using it for a class here, another class there. They're not using the whole soup to nuts, but they'll be caught up in it. So they'll have to go, oh, crap, now I got to find another provider. All right, let's say they do that. And they've arranged their life now around having providers for this stuff. Now they got to work backwards and fill in all those gaps. And they're counting on people not wanting to do that again. Or they're counting on you going online and trying to sign up for the little providers who saw, yeah, I can grow my business a lot quicker if I take the ESA money. I would make a lot more money. I'm going to survive. There's inflation. Everything's expensive. I'm starving as it is. What if my students go, ooh, money, and they leave me because I'm not taking the money? Now my business goes bust. I can't survive at lukeon.org or High School Math Live or whatever that isn't taking the money. They've got to count on committed homeschoolers who are like, no, don't want the money to maintain their business. The vast majority of parents, just like the vast majority of parents went, school, they'll do it. They'll take the money. They'll go for it. This whole don't take the money. Most people are going to take the money in part because they feel like they have to, because they're making everything so insanely expensive that if you're homeschooling now and you need to pay for somebody else to teach your kid calculus, sounds really appealing to get that money. So then the providers cave. And now even people like me who want to go say, oh, screw this, I'll leave, Williamsburg. We'll go and we'll hire, High School at Math Live to teach the math I can't teach. Crap. They've just decided to take ESA money. I'm stuck with my kid in a program that's watched over by the government. I now have to fill out the same forms. I have to go through the same things. Guess what happens? So the way they're going to do it is push so many homeschoolers into the position of having to do what we never really had to do. I used to tell people as recently as like last week, you don't have to teach all the math. You don't have to teach the Latin. You don't have to teach the Spanish. You don't have to do that. There's people. There's services. There's independents out there who will do this for you. You just hire them. You pay them, whatever. And they're not super expensive. But what happens when they start taking government money and then they have the strings attached of now you have to take all the students and you have to take the students from here and there and everywhere and you have to provide this minimal level of service and now they got to charge more because they're like, well, shit, before I was able to do it because I didn't have to hire 10 more teachers and I didn't have to give them benefits and I didn't have to do this. I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to get rid of my tests and I could, I didn't have to take twice as long to teach kids or group them into ability levels. Oh, I'm not allowed to do that anymore. Forgive me if I'm 75 steps ahead and you guys are like, Deb, talk slower, please. I can't follow. I do apologize. But it's like everything else that government touches. It just, you get layers of incentives. I'll go with what Mark Owsley said. I'm not going to talk about slippery slopes. We'll talk about layers of incentive. And those layers of incentive just build on themselves and build on themselves. And you can't blame any of the individual layers. I can't blame the teachers at High School Math Live because they're in a pickle. I can't blame the parents who want to take the money because they're in a pickle. And this is what they do. They put us in these pickles. They put us in these positions where it becomes harder and harder and harder to maintain your principles, to stand by your values, to do the thing you know is the right thing to do, the morally correct thing to do, but also the educationally correct thing to do, the philosophically correct thing to do for your kids. But you're like, and the fact that they still control the system that says you must document that you are giving your child an education for our satisfaction, we being government, or else. As long as there's an or else on the other side, you getting away from them is going to become increasingly difficult. And the reason I wanted to make this video today was to warn you about that so you can start early to be on your guard for those things and you can come up with solutions in advance. If that means you have to rework your budget, if that means you've got to figure out, do I need to move? Do I need to choose different curriculum because I don't want to wake up one day and my kid is committed to this and then they pull the rug out from under me by making it a government thing? Like I'm in that position. My daughter just started high school at Williamsburg. The other one's only got 2 more years and I'm trying to nudge her into the dual enrollment, community college thing, which sounds funny because you're like, but isn't that, government school? It is, but the cost benefit still works out. It's free and you get college credit. So if your kid wants to go to college, there's that. I don't know why. I mean, I visited my eldest at college yesterday and I'll talk about that in a second, but let's say they do, okay, they get that. So it's like the cost benefit fits. The learning's not completely awful. It's not great, but it's there. And it's like 1 class a week or whatever. So in other words, you have a little bit more control. The downsides are not as big as some of the other downsides of doing it through a high school program. You get more bang for your, I'm a serf to the government dollar. And then but if you're with this, the freshman, she's got 2 years. Like if they change something, if they start taking this money, they're working on school choice in Utah. If they do that, that's where they're based. It could change everything. And even the most well-meaning teacher, director, headmaster who's tried to reassure me, we're holding the line, we're doing this, we're doing that, they might not have a choice. They might not have a choice. They might have to say goodbye to like all their students, close up shop, etc. I mean, they're not going to. They're not going to. They employ too many people. There are too many people depending on them, and not for nothing, the vast majority of their parents and their students will probably be fine with it. They probably wouldn't even notice. And to the extent that they do notice, they'll be demanding, take my ESA card. This is how I want to pay for it. They're tying their continued existence and growth to something that is going to have strings. And then we either are going to have our own separate economy with our own separate homeschool providers who are just, nope, mission driven, not taking the money. And as I said, it's going to become harder and harder the more they like bleed us dry with inflation and energy costs and food costs, or the whole thing's going to be under their control. That's how they're coming for us. So people, they can't ban homeschooling. They don't need to. They don't need to. Just like they don't need to really come for your guns. They just need to have your kids. And they need to teach your kids that guns are bad so that your kids grow up not wanting them. And then we stop the cycle. We have a whole bunch of people who just don't even want to own a gun. And those who do will be othered and outside of everybody else. They won't be accepted. They won't have the same social credit as the people who want them, or they have to hide them and be criminals. And for all we know, they'll turn you in. My parents have guns. I don't want them to have guns. I feel scared. So they don't need to have an army of FBI agents or sheriff's office employees, whatever. They just need to have an army of children who are philosophically in line with them. They don't need to ban homeschooling for the same reason. They just need to have parents who mistakenly think, as we know happened during COVID, that virtual schooling is homeschooling. No, it's not. I even know, I call myself a homeschool parent because I homeschooled my kids when they were little. I know how to homeschool. I taught my eldest in freshman year in high school. She was literally homeschooled. We did everything a la carte, and I was her teacher in a lot of it. And then she did, what you call it, dual enrollment. But I'm really stretching the definition to say that my younger two are homeschooled. They're at home. They're definitely at home. And as I said, I do pick the classes. I do look and read the descriptions and pick what they're going to take. But the place they're going to take them from is chosen by their dad. I mean, I helped pick it out of a series of choices that I had, which was very narrow. And I was very, very happy with it because they had a syllabus. It was more like old-fashioned school, like in the 50s. Here's a syllabus, and here's how you reach the teacher, and the teacher had boundaries, and it was like nice little old-fashioned school, just happened to happen on a computer. But let's get real. It's not what I've been encouraging all of you guys to do. It's not what I would be doing if I had my druthers. I would be picking individual books. I'd be picking individual, prompts for writing and lessons for history and labs to do for science and all of that. I'd be doing either myself or I'd be handpicking the teacher to do it. And that's really homeschooling. And that's just going to become something that people have to do off the grid. Leave the money on the table and plan on teaching it like yourself. And you might think again, like, well, how do I get the calculus or how do I get this? I don't have an answer. If your kid is of an age right now where they need it and they're like all right, they're the age today, you're probably fine. You'll outrun it. But if you have a kid in kindergarten, it's going to be harder for you. That is why I say, if you want to be active about something, be active about not having vouchers. First of all, vouchers are poison, and not having government funded ESAs, self-funded only, and where it's your money. In other words, rather than be called, an education savings account, so they start controlling it like the FSA, have it be more like a tax credit, or a savings account that you can save, like that you can decide what education is. But I think a tax credit is the best way that it's not government control of where you're spending the individual dollars. Like, they don't come to you right now when you take your dependent credit of, I have 3 kids, I get this many dollars because I have a kid. I don't pay that in taxes. They don't tell us what grocery store to shop at. when we use some of that money for food. They don't tell us how many hours we have to work or not work when we use some of that money to not work. Okay. Or to hire childcare. They don't do that. And even to a certain extent, they're allowing people to use some of their accounts, their pre-tax savings accounts, to pay for childcare without going and checking on all the accreditation of the childcare. It's actually remarkably free considering. So if it followed more along those lines, to where it's like, if you say it's childcare and you get a receipt that like childcare was a babysitter, it was a nanny, it was whatever, but you like deducted it, that's what you should be fighting for. Raising your own kids with your own money. But they're gonna end up banning homeschooling if this keeps going state by state by state. They will do it by attrition. The otherwise homeschooling parents will be using these decentralized systems and services, mostly using tech, which of course are going to gather all their data and surveil your child for the government. That's another thing I had to sign off on, is no surveillance of my child. I hope you guys have all done that survey. I did it, sent it off to the school, and they kind of chuckled at me because they're like, we're not doing this. I'm like, I don't care. Take the form. So, but that's what's going to happen. And if you look at most of the conferences going on around the world, if you look at a lot of meetings that are being had, if you go online on YouTube and you start Googling like education summit, education symposium, like future education, or fourth industrial revolution, like start Googling these things. You can find rabbit holes to go down where there are groups of elitists sitting in conference rooms and halls, lecture halls around this country right now, talking about how they're going to use that money already. They're already talking about how they want these non-state actors to work with state actors, and how the state needs to partner, code for fascism, with the non-state actors to deliver the education in a decentralized fashion so they can have equity and reach everybody. They're doctoring up the language to make it sound like they're making something so accessible. What they're actually doing is they're making you accessible to government. They're not making education accessible to you. They're making you accessible to government using technology, and they're calling it education. And then they say they're giving you dollars to pay for it. They're not giving you dollars at all. Like I said, they're yours, washed through them and their employees, and wasted to a large degree, but most of them are borrowed. When you owe $30 trillion as a nation, it is utterly ludicrous to talk about any of this money being yours anymore. It's like completely absurd. Just absurd. You're earning negative dollars. You have this thing called money that you can go and trade for stuff that, you can have some food and some gas in your car and things like that, but you're not actually like earning anything. Your wealth is not, you have as much as they let you have of these little coupons they call money. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. It's just when you see it, once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? Ego brain, you can't. You're just like, how long are they going to let me live? For real. It's like, when will it be? They've come up with the exact phrases and word salad to make it acceptable to remove me from the planet. Don't think I'm an extreme crazy person. That's about where we're at. Human beings are rapidly approaching being obsolete to these people, your children especially. And I hate to sound all like Alex Jones or anything, but like homeschooling is a threat. Homeschooling as it is supposed to be is a threat to this whole system. That's why I kept saying to people, please leave. Please just leave. Figure the rest out later. Sign your affidavit. Get your ass out. Don't worry about how you're going to pay for it. Don't worry about what you're teaching. Fuck calculus. I mean, like if you're like, how am I going to teach math? Just stop. Just stop. You'll be lucky to live in a world where calculus in the individual brain is relevant in the future. I hope we live in that world where it matters that your child can or cannot do calculus. I do. I really do, because I think we need our bridges to like actually stand up and our planes to fly and things, to work properly. But we're so far past that. If what you want to do is make it so that you and your family and your children actually like survive and are, have lives that are tough to make obsolete because they're not in the system, so they can't be taken out of this. Like the system doesn't have any interest in them at all. Then you gotta homeschool the old-fashioned way. Paper books, pencil and paper, and use technology minimally, only as much as you absolutely have to. Find sources that have principles where you're dealing with a one-on-one, like you're dealing with a teacher and the teacher's like in it because they're passionate about it and they want to teach kids, and they're not recording your sessions and they're not documenting anything. It's all, word of mouth. They have a paper contract. It's like, that's what you need to do. Pretend you are living in decades past. Don't get super excited about it. It's still great, and there's this like electronic thing, and I used to, before that stuff, I used to be like, Khan Academy can help you do it for free, and this one, and Time for Learning, and they're all great, and just go sign up for this, and you don't have to worry about it, because I wanted people to get away from the public schools so badly that I was like, you could just do it from your computer. And then I learned what they were doing and how they are data mining the living shit out of our kids, and they're using new homeschoolers desperate to rescue their children to do it. And now they're using school choice to get us back in the fold, or to prevent any of us from really homeschooling, to take that same momentum away from the brick and mortar buildings and keep it going towards the vendors that they love, because they came about to have this new internet of, the internet of education, or education internet, or whatever the fuck it's called, that will fuel the next industrial revolution with little human cogs. I write these lines of code. I do this. This is my code master. And where everything is going to be a little gig that you do for your tech masters. And they want to make it sound so, it's like, oh, STEM and this and that. But they don't want to empower your individual child to be a scientist. They don't want to empower your individual child to be a mathematician. They don't want even your kid to be a computer, a software engineer of the old school, where like they could write a whole program all by themselves, they know how to do it and they can undo it and they can do that. They don't really want that. They just want people to learn how to write the code they want them to write, have the, figure out what social competencies they have, and are you going to be a problem to work with? You're not? Great. Okay, come sit in slot A and do the work we have in slot A and do the thing. And here are your little coupons for your food and your coupons for your housing and your coupons. And UBI is coming. It's coming. And education is at the crux of it. That's why SEL exists. That's why they want to take all of our kids and make them all group oriented. It's the giant Truman Show. I'm not kidding. And yes, you will own nothing and be happy. And people go, but I have things. Like, yes, you have what they let you have. And when the day arrives that you are no longer useful, or you start asking too many questions, or your social competencies are deemed not, insufficient for you to get work. Look, I'm already a living, breathing example of this in action. If I were not married, I would be a homeless person, or I'd be on the government dole. Let's get real. I can barely, I tried to apply for a friggin' prep cook position at a local restaurant, and they didn't even interview me. They didn't even interview me. They talked to me on the phone, like, yes, we're desperate for help. Oh, send us your resume, blah, blah, blah. I sent the resume. I followed up. I said, so I just want to follow up and see if I can come for an interview. You guys, I know we need help really bad. Whatever, I have experience. We eat breakfast. I could do it and still be back in time to help my daughter or whatever and do this work. Yeah, we found somebody. I was like, that was yesterday. I mean, I could be paranoid, but that's happened multiple times now. Not just for that position, but for the other positions I've applied for. I can't even sign up with a temp agency. Paranoia? I don't know. But I guess my social competencies are insufficient for what they want. Because I cannot get a job. An actual just job. Every time, and I'm done filling out applications. I'm so done with it. I'm tempted to lie. with the exception of they have my name, so they can just Google me. It's really tempting to fill out a job application for a fake person with a different name and just see if I could get the job that way, just as a test. But it's already happening. If you don't have a tangible skill that people need to buy that you can go out in the marketplace and just sell person to person, like you're a plumber, you're a carpenter, you're an electrician, you're a mechanic, even doctors, as we know now, have to toe the line. Even doctors have to say the right scripts or they don't get to work in one of these giant practices. And you have to have a fair amount of money to start your own medical practice because the malpractice insurance is ridiculously high. So if you're a new doctor, you start out with a practice or with a hospital. And that means there are certain things you have to say or not say, certain things you have to do or not do, certain protocols you follow, certain approaches to diagnosis and treatment that you use. And if you step out of line, you will be gone. You will be gone. That includes the gender affirming care. That includes, whatever it might include. I mean, I went to a new doctor, I switched doctors to a smaller practice, a private practice, hoping to get better care. And the doctor, my husband assures me the nurse practitioner is better, but the doctor who does all the new patient intakes, this was literally the week we got the admission from the CDC that we made mistakes. The shot doesn't prevent you from getting sick, and we can't prove that it causes you to not die. And all this, it's just whatever. The CDC revised all its guidelines, and people were starting to admit openly, without getting banned, that the shot is a load of shit. Not in so many words, but okay. And she's standing there telling me, like she was reading from a script, that I needed to get the vaccine. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you I literally said no words. She says, have you had your COVID vaccine? No. And I didn't say another word from then on. She went through her little speech. We're strongly advising all of our patients because it is, even though, you still might get sick and then you won't go to the hospital and you won't die. It'll protect you from dying from long-term complications. And the long-term complications are really bad. And so you really should get your shot. And then you should definitely get your booster. Blah, blah, blah. And it was like listening to Fauci talk. And she's listening to my heart and going in a deep breath and this and that. I said no more words. I let her do her little spiel. And I just said nothing. I'm not getting the fucking shot. And she probably knows it, but she's going through her little spiel because she probably knows that she's supposed to. And God forbid I was some secret person who was going to get asked in some survey, or I was a plant from someone's investigator going to ask, did they mention the shot to you? They didn't mention the shot to you. Well, we're the insurance company and we're going to take away the insurance. I mean, there's no way that the way she was going through it was like robotic. Well, we're talking about blah, 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 blah. I so badly wanted to say, do you really believe this? Or are you just doing it because you have to? But I felt like it was in some dystopian movie. It was creepy. And, I left there, whatever. And like I said, my husband assures me that the nurse practitioner is better. And I hope so, because I'm going back for follow-up on Thursday, and we'll see if I get better care, because no fucking way I'm getting the shot. But they're all doing it. Medicine's doing it. So education is not going to be any different. And why did medicine go this way? Obamacare. What was Obamacare? What was it? Oh, right. Subsidy for insurance. Was that access to care? No, it was not. It was access to insurance. And then what happened? The insurance companies all got regulated even more. They had mandates. Couldn't turn anyone away. Pre-existing conditions. So many things. So now the price goes up for everybody because it can't only go up for the high-risk people. It goes up for everybody. The grandfather plans went away. They even put a little provision: if anything changes, you can take the grandfather plan away. It is. The government is a corporation. Corporations are government. There's no differentiation between the two. We have something that is akin to what James Lindsay is calling communofascism. And you have the illusion of private enterprise, but so highly regulated that it's utterly ridiculous. Like, you can't even call yourself private anymore. And this is what I've been trying to say to people. Like, if you want to homeschool, please do, but understand that what it is. And what it is you're going off grid for your child's education. You're treating the education of your child the way you treat the feeding of your child. That's the only thing comparable at this point. They still have not yet come into your house and told you what to feed your kids. That will be coming soon, most likely, probably. But yeah, bugs. You can only eat this much meat, whatever. It's coming. It's just a matter of years and mindset. But, and that's the other reason they're starting with education. But you have to do it yourself. So consider this my warning. It probably won't be the last one, but it's on you. There are a lot of things I can no longer recommend to you that I used to recommend. I can no longer recommend Khan Academy. I can no longer recommend Time for Learning. I can no longer recommend even Power School and the things where you can go online and take a class and it's recorded and so forth. I can no longer recommend anything like that, because as long as most of the work is getting done online, checking boxes, I can't recommend Quizlet. I can't recommend Google Classroom. I can't recommend Canvas. I can't recommend any of these things anymore, even for your own personal use, because everything you do, if you input any student information, now, if you have a way to use Canvas where you're just disseminating information to the student, but the student does the work on paper, or the student sends something to you in a more old-fashioned, rudimentary way, then maybe. If you're just using it to keep track. Same thing with Evernote, same thing with all of these. Use them in their most rudimentary way. Don't get all cutesy, and when they say, enter your students here and invite your students with a special link, and then your student will have a special code, and then your student will have their own link, and then your student. No. Just don't do it. Try to hold off on giving your kids an internet footprint as long as possible, or create one on a private server that they control and let them do that, or do everything anonymously through a VPN. Proton Mail, if you pay the minimum, it's like the $3.99 a month, you get a VPN with that. And you get, I believe, 10 email addresses. So you can set your family up with Proton and have a VPN to go about using the internet and protect yourselves a little bit more. But you got to do these things. Homeschooling is not just about the education that you're going to give your kids. It's increasingly becoming about parenting your children without the government, not co-parenting with the government in any way. I'm pretty sure, though I cannot prove it, that what we order from our online grocery orders, if you do that sort of thing, is also being documented, because they're going to get ready for the whole food thing too. So go to the store. My husband likes to order that way, and I cringe, because that means tied to us is everything we eat, what our eating habits are. It's only a matter of time. You eat too much sugar, you eat too much beef. Your carbon footprint is X. You are no longer allowed to buy beef. You're no longer allowed to buy sugar. If you think this is insane, this is what they do in China now, right now, already. There's a reason they're pushing the bugs on us, because they don't want to be accused of literally starving us to death. So they'll say, you've reached your meat cap for the month. Go buy bugs. You can eat bugs. Or you can eat soybeans, so you can die of cancer sooner because of all the phytoestrogen that you'll be consuming. So food is the only thing you don't like to order online? That's funny. I don't like to order food online because it never shows up the right thing. And I just don't like other people touching my food and shopping for my food. And the whole thing creeps me out. I don't like to do it, but he likes to do it. So he goes and he places these orders, and then I don't really participate. And I go and I buy the groceries separately at the store. So hoping to confuse them. But who knows, maybe eventually they'll lock us out of the store, or they'll say, your payment is no longer good here because we know that your husband bought, this many things online or whatever. So what I do is I tell them, don't buy any of the fresh, don't buy meat, and don't buy that stuff, and just buy your processed shit. Then what's the worst they can do? Cut us off from eating processed shit? Yay. I don't care. Yeah, store cards are tracking you. If you have those loyalty cards, whatever, I don't use them. Absolutely do not use them. I don't use the alternate IDs. I don't use that stuff. And I hate to sound like I said, I hate to sound all paranoid, but they're documenting every move we make. Every fucking move. And they're buying access to us. Like I said, they're not giving you access to education. They're buying access to your education for your children. That's what they're doing. So I just had to come say some more. I will alert you to the fact that I've been working with Mark Owsley, Unwokable, and Kelly Shinseki, and Lisa Logan, and a few other people. We've dug up some more information that supports what I'm saying, but we're not really ready. It's all out there. Like, you go find it. It's not like some hidden dark secret stuff. It's just that we've sort of found it. I should really say Kelly's found it and Lisa's found it, because they're the ones who sit at their computers all day going rabbit hole, rabbit hole, rabbit hole. I'm more of a presenter. And they do writing, and we kind of like are trying to fill in each other's gaps, but we're going to work together on this one, and we're going to try to come up with a way to present this in a coherent fashion so that no one of us is branded a lunatic all by ourselves. They can't isolate us. They do a lot of that. They try to, isolate, demonize, shut you up. So we're going to try to have it coming out in so many different ways, from so many different places, that it's going to be a little bit more difficult for them to say Alex Jones, tinfoil hat wearing crazy person. But that's about where we're at. Like, the more I do this work, the more I dig into it, the more I learn, the more I realize even just a year ago I was wrong. I thought I sounded crazy a year ago. I sounded downright mainstream compared to the shit I know today. And that's why I said I've got to go back and update that homeschool list of what I recommend. I can't even in clear conscience recommend Well-Trained Mind anymore without warning you that Susan Wise Bauer is woke. That doesn't mean all the materials are woke. I mean, there's the materials, the books, the things are still solid. They're still really, really good. But she's gone off the cliff. Just like Brene Brown did. Brene Brown used to say some smart things, and then she got bought up. She got sucked into that. And now I can't even listen to her. They've taken the good that she had, and they've weaponized it, and they've mass produced it, and they've Walmartized it. And now it is just poison. And she's poison because she's out there supporting things like Kendiism. So I feel like I have to check back with myself every other month. Like, do I still agree with me a month ago? Because I might not have known everything that was really happening. So question everything you see. Don't even listen to me, because I might be behind. All I can tell you for sure that I know is that none of this is benign. That I know for sure. 100%. So anyway, thank you guys for listening. And I will do the show I was supposed to do last night, the Dissonant Dispatch. I'm going to do tonight. I was visiting my daughter at college. I said I was going to comment on that briefly. I've got 7 minutes. I'll tell you what happened at App State. First of all, gorgeous campus. Amazing. Like, wow. Totally get why anyone would want to spend 4 years there. It's beautiful in the mountains. The campus has so many new buildings. Her dorm is nicer than literally every apartment building I lived in until I was 32. No, that's not true. I had one nice apartment in Dallas. It was brand new and it was pretty nice. But in every other place I've lived, absolute abject shithole compared to the dorm that she's living in. It's beautiful. I mean, it's still a dorm, but they have their own private bathroom, and it's like a Jack and Jill with their suite mates, and it's a suite. And I mean, it's pretty incredible. Beautiful common spaces. They have, I can tell you, they already know what our kids are eating, because when they pay for their room and board, they get a meal card. And the meal card is loaded with a certain amount of money. So you don't just go into the dining hall and get what you want, and only it's you and the lunch lady. Only you and the cafeteria person know what you're eating, and even they're not paying attention. Okay? No, it's all on a card. Everything is on a card, and you check out with the card, and a document is like how much you spent. You can take your food to go, or you can eat there. The vast majority of students are taking their food to go. So they're taking a container. I saw these kids coming back from the dining hall with their little to-go containers, going back to the room. So the whole experience of even sitting in a dining hall with all the other college kids and being like, hey, what's going on, whatever, they're not even doing that. My daughter said the vast majority of students just go eat in their room. They might eat in the common room or whatever with one other person. It's weird. So they're taking that, in a to-go, but after the card, the vending machines take meal cards. And of course, the vending machines, you pick what number you want, what you bought. So now it knows what you bought. They have cheeseburgers in the vending machine. They have cheeseburgers, they have fast food, they have like other little snacky things, they have drinks, they have coffee drinks. They know exactly how many milligrams of caffeine you're consuming, or at least buying, based on your freaking meal card. And I couldn't say, I didn't want to like upset her. So I'm just like watching this. Oh, that's cool. Like whatever. So we go, and we're hanging out, and we were sitting at lunch at the Mellow Mushroom, and she's showing me her notes, all of her notes she's taking on her phone. And well, actually on her laptop, but she's taking them in her notes program, or in a notes program or a Google thing. And so it's all there in like Google or whatever that she's typing all her notes, what she's writing down. Then it's in her phone and she can access it. So she's showing me the notes that she's taken from her classes. And I posted on Twitter about how her social deviance class, the first thing was an oatmeal article about critical thinking, allegedly, but it was really complete bullshit. And I told her as much. But I will say this, it might just have been a lazy professor, because the professor did another exercise with them, which I thought was pretty smart. And actually, this was in Psych 101. Sorry, that social deviant professor I have my serious doubts about, and I'll talk about that. But the Psych 101 professor did something smart. This is not the oatmeal assignment. He came into class and threw a bunch of toilet paper rolls out into the class. 270 kids in this class, and said, "Okay, I want you each to pass the roll around that is near you and take off as much as you need to get the job done." That's all the directions they were given. Well, what do you think the kids did? They started taking toilet paper. Thankfully, somebody raised their hand. Some smart person raised their hand. Even my daughter said she raised her hand. She just wasn't her who said it. What job? And I was like, yes, thank you. Some parent did their job. So, what job? And he says, aha, aha. And they went through this whole exercise because he wanted to teach them about research and methodology and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, and then he said, well, what job would you think it would be? And so they go through, but I didn't tell you, did I? So you didn't know if we were mopping up spilled soup or you were, going to the bathroom. So he said, okay, the job you think, how much it takes for you to have a bowel movement, whatever. Take the amount you think it would take to get that job done. And he said, and I want you to count exactly how many squares. So the students are doing it and they're counting how many squares. He says, write it down. Now, the next time this actually occurs in your life, and you don't have to tell me the answer. This is an exercise for you. The next time this occurs, I want you to check your hypothesis. Be honest about it. Just take the amount and whatever, and then count up the squares. Were you able to get the job done for that amount of squares? So he's kind of like showing like what we think versus what is actually real versus, like our hypothesis versus reality and experiment, and like how our own desire to have our experiment match what we said it was going to be might override our honesty and our ethics. And so I kind of thought that was a creative way to go about it. I thought that's sort of a creative way to go about it. I still think it's imperfect because, like I said, they're going to, unless he calls them out and says, but you knew this was, did you lie? But are you going to do that when you do an experiment? Can't do that. So that class was cool. Deviant Psych, though, this is literally the assignment. They were given a sheet of all different kinds of families. And I think it went all the way down to like K or L, like from A. And each letter represented a different so-called family structure. And they had a child who was up for adoption. And they needed to decide, less than 2 minutes. They needed to decide what family to adopt the kid out to. And then they had all these different kinds of families and different things. It was like polyamorous, whatever. And I was like, what is the value of this lesson? It was really fucked up. And it was obviously making out that Christian and conservatives were a form of deviance. So I had serious questions about that. But anyway, I'm running out of time. Bottom line is she's happy. So I'm trying to be happy for her. But I'm just hoping that everything I've taught her will supersede any kind of lunacy that comes up. And hopefully they won't data mine the shit out of her over the next 4 years. Thank you for watching. I will see you guys at Dissident Dispatch later if you're around 8:30. Have a great day.